It is February in Lancaster County, and the wind is coming off the fields in long, cold sheets that find every gap in the barn wall and remind you that winter does not care about your plans. The English neighbor 2 miles down the road has not been out to his greenhouse in a week. The pipes froze in December. The propane bill to keep the place above freezing came to $280 for the month of January alone, and by the end of February, he will have spent more heating that greenhouse than the tomatoes and the peppers he grew in it were ever worth. So the greenhouse sits dark and cold, and he tells himself he will figure out a better way next year. And next year comes and nothing changes because nobody ever showed him there was another way. Now come out behind my barn. There is a low greenhouse there, 12 feet wide and 24 feet long. Plastic glazing on a simple wooden frame, nothing fancy, nothing that costs much to build. And on a February morning when it is 18 degrees outside and the wind is doing its worst, the air inside that greenhouse is 52 degrees. The seedlings on the bench are green and growing. The soil in the beds is alive and warm. And there is not a propane line running to that building. There is no electric heater humming in the corner, no oil burner, no gas bill, no wire from the power company. The heat that keeps that greenhouse alive on a winter night comes from the same place the heat that kept my grandfather's farmhouse alive came from the earth itself, from the slow burning of composting material, and from the way a well-built structure catches and holds what the sun gives it for free every clear day. That same combination of methods, used carefully and built right, can heat a small house, a workshop, a root cellar, a livestock barn, or a growing space through a hard winter on almost nothing. Not almost nothing as a figure of speech, almost nothing as a real dollar amount that will surprise you when you work it out. My name is Amos Stoltzfus. I am Amish, and I farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. My people have kept buildings warm, without electricity and without fossil fuel, for as long as we have been farming this ground. Today I am going to walk you through 4 methods that do it, what each one costs, how to build or set it up, and how to combine them so they cover for each other through the coldest weeks. Before I go further, for the folks who want all of this, every method I have shown on this channel and the ones I have not gotten to yet, all in one place. I have put it together in a book at my website, AmosStoltzfus.com. I will not push it again in the video. If you want it, it is there. Now let me show you the methods, and let me be honest with you right at the start, the way I always am. The title says Unlimited Heat, and I will tell you what that means plainly so you know what holds up and what deserves a fair word of explanation. No method I am going to show you is unlimited in the sense that it requires nothing from you. Every one of them requires some attention, some building, some management. What is unlimited or close enough to it to deserve the word is the source. The earth's warmth does not run out. The sun does not send a bill. Compost made from what your property produces for free every season does not cost you a trip to the fuel supplier. The heat is not unlimited in watts or BTUs. It is unlimited in the sense that the source replenishes itself season after season and costs you almost nothing to tap. That is what they mean. Honest is more useful than impressive, and once you see these methods working together in your own building, you will understand why the word unlimited is not as wild as it first sounds. Stay with me. Let me first tell you the thing that makes all 4 of these methods possible, because once you understand it, the rest of the video makes plain sense and you will be able to look at your own building and immediately see where each one belongs. Heat does not disappear. That is the rule. Heat moves. It always moves from a warmer place toward a cooler one. What every heating system in the world is doing, whether it is a propane furnace or a masonry heater or a pile of composting hay, is creating heat somewhere and then trying to keep it from moving away too fast. The buildings that stay warm for the least money are not the ones with the biggest heaters. They are the ones that slow the movement of heat the most. Every method I am about to show you either creates heat from a free or nearly free source, or slows the escape of heat that has already been made, or both at once. That is the whole game. Once you see it that way, the methods stop seeming like tricks and start seeming like what they are, simple physics that anyone can use. The first method, and the oldest one on this list, is the hotbed. This is what the old market gardeners and the monastery farmers and the kitchen garden men of Europe used to start their spring crops weeks before the ground thawed. A hotbed is a garden bed, enclosed under a glass or plastic cover with a thick layer of fresh horse manure buried beneath the growing soil. That manure is the heater. Fresh horse manure, mixed with the straw bedding it comes with, is one of the most vigorous composting materials there is. When that material is piled in a confined space and begins to decompose, the bacteria doing the work of breaking it down generate real, measurable, usable heat. A well-built hotbed loaded with fresh horse manure will hold the bed temperature between 70 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 to 6 weeks without any other heat source at all. In the coldest weeks of late winter, when the air outside is below freezing and the ground is iron hard, the soil inside a properly built hotbed stays warm enough to germinate seeds and grow seedlings all the way to transplant size. The build is simple. You dig a bed about 18 inches deep and whatever length suits your space. You fill the bottom 12 inches with a mix of fresh horse manure and straw, packed firmly. Over that you put 6 inches of good growing soil or a compost and soil mix. You cover it with a cold frame, which is nothing more than a low wooden box with an old window sash or a piece of greenhouse plastic laid over the top. The cover is what holds the heat in. Without it, the warmth from the manure rises and escapes, and you have a warm bed in a cold world. With it, the warmth is trapped, and the bed becomes a small climate of its own. The hotbed does not stay hot forever. After 3 to 6 weeks, the first burst of microbial activity in the manure slows, and the temperature drops. By that point in the season, late February or early March in Pennsylvania, the outside temperatures are climbing anyway, and the bed needs less help. You can recharge it by opening one end and sliding in a fresh load of manure alongside the old, packing it down and letting it fire up again. Some gardeners refresh their hotbeds 2 or 3 times through the winter and keep a productive growing space from November to April on nothing but horse manure and a salvaged window frame. The cost. In most parts of this country, horse manure is one of the most available free materials there is. Horse owners need to get rid of it. If you live within reasonable distance of a stable or a horse farm, the manure is yours for the hauling, sometimes delivered if you ask kindly and the stable owner likes having a place to put it. The cold frame itself, 4 boards and an old window, costs nothing if you have scrap lumber and a salvaged window. A new window sash at the salvage yard runs $5 to $10. The whole hotbed, built from scratch with new materials, can be done for under $30. Built from what most farms and workshops have on hand, it costs almost nothing. The honest word on the hotbed. It heats the soil in the bed. It does not heat the air in a greenhouse to a comfortable temperature on its own in deep winter. If you are trying to keep tomatoes alive through a January freeze, the hotbed alone is not enough. But as one piece of a larger system, it is the most productive piece there is, because it creates a warm root zone for plants when everything above the soil is cold and slow. Roots grow in warmth, and plants with warm roots do far more than plants shivering at the base, even when the air above them is cool. The second method is the one that surprises people the most the first time they hear it, and the one that does the biggest work in my own greenhouse. This is the deep litter composting system, sometimes called the hot floor or the living floor, and it is the difference between a greenhouse that costs $200 a month in propane and one that heats itself. The idea is this: instead of a concrete floor or a bare dirt floor in your greenhouse or barn, you build a deep bed of composting organic material, straw, wood chips, hay, manure, kitchen scraps, leaves, right on the floor of the building. You manage it the way you would manage a compost pile, turning it occasionally, adding new material on top as the old breaks down, keeping it damp enough to compost actively, but not wet enough to go sour. And that composting material, exactly like the manure in the hotbed, generates heat as the bacteria work. The difference is the scale. A deep litter floor that is a foot or more deep across 100 square feet of greenhouse floor is generating a very large amount of heat, steadily all winter long from material that either costs nothing or that you are producing on the property anyway. The numbers behind this are real, and they are worth knowing. A cubic yard of actively composting material, which is a pile about 3 feet on each side, can generate between 150 and 400 BTUs of heat per hour at peak activity. A well-managed deep litter floor in a modest greenhouse, say 12 feet by 20 feet, with a foot of active compost beneath it, is working with something like 8 to 10 cubic yards of material. That is potentially 1,200 to 4,000 BTUs an hour from the floor alone on the coldest nights from material that was free. Now, I know some of you are reaching for a pencil to write those numbers down. The cubic yard, the 150 to 400 BTUs, the 8 to 10 cubic yards for a 12 by 20 space, you do not need to. Every measurement I just gave you and every ratio and calculation that follows for the rest of these methods is written down plain in the book at my website, the same one I mentioned at the start. Numbers like these are not for holding in your head from a video. They are for reading again when you are standing in front of your own building deciding what to build. So put the pencil down and stay with me, because the next part is the one that determines whether this whole system works or sits cold all winter. The thing that determines whether a deep litter floor gives you real heat or just a nice garden bed is carbon to nitrogen ratio. That is the chemistry that runs the whole operation. Bacteria that compost organic material need a balance of carbon-rich material, the browns, straw, dry leaves, wood chips, and nitrogen-rich material, the greens, fresh manure, kitchen scraps, fresh plant material. Too much carbon and the pile composts slowly and cool. Too much nitrogen and it goes hot and sour, and the ammonia smell will drive you out of the building. The old farmers called the right balance by feel. The modern compost books put it at about 25 to 30 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen by weight, which in practical terms means roughly 3 or 4 parts straw or wood chips to 1 part fresh manure or kitchen waste. You build the floor in layers. Start with 4 to 6 inches of wood chips or straw on the bare ground. Add a layer of fresh manure or nitrogen-rich material, another layer of carbon. Continue until the floor is 8 to 12 inches deep. Then you wet it until it feels like a wrung-out sponge, damp through but not dripping. Cover it with a final layer of straw to hold the moisture in. Within 2 or 3 days in cool weather, sometimes within 24 hours in warm weather, the pile will begin to heat. Push your hand into it 6 inches and you will feel the warmth building. In a week, the core of the floor can be running between 120 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to burn your hand if you push in deep. That heat radiates upward into the greenhouse air all winter. You manage it by turning sections of it every few weeks with a fork, adding fresh material as the old breaks down, and keeping the moisture level right. Dry material does not compost. Waterlogged material goes cold and anaerobic and smells wrong. The signs of a well-managed living floor are simple. It smells like good earth. It is warm to the touch 6 inches down. It does not stink of ammonia. And the greenhouse above it stays measurably warmer than the same greenhouse on bare ground. The third method is the one that works even when there is no manure, no compost, and no living material at all. It works on pure physics. This is the earth battery, sometimes called a ground-to-air heat exchanger or a thermal mass floor, and it is the silent partner to everything else in this system. Below the frost line, which in most of the northern half of this country runs between 2 and 4 feet down, the Earth holds a steady temperature year-round of between 45 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on your latitude. Even in the coldest Pennsylvania February, the ground 4 feet down is sitting at roughly 50 degrees. The Earth is a thermal battery, and it has been absorbing and storing heat all summer long. By winter, all of that stored warmth is sitting right under your feet, and most buildings do nothing with it at all. The earth battery is a way of connecting the air in your greenhouse or your home to that stored warmth in the ground. The simplest version is a series of buried pipes. You dig trenches around and beneath your growing space, set 4-inch perforated drainage pipe in them at a depth of 3 to 4 feet, connect the pipes to a loop that runs back up to ground level at both ends, and push air through the system. The air from inside the greenhouse, which in winter is warmer than the deep earth but colder than you want it to be, travels down through the pipes, gives up some of its heat to the earth in summer, and collects warmth from the earth in winter and returns to the greenhouse slightly moderated. In summer, the system cools. In winter, it warms. The passive version, which is what most small growers use and what I am most familiar with, uses no fan and no electricity. You simply connect the pipe ends to the greenhouse in a way that allows natural convection to move the air. Warm air rises and exits through a high vent. Cool air draws in through the low buried pipe end. The loop runs itself as long as there is a temperature difference between the air and the earth. A more active version uses a small 12-volt computer fan, the kind that runs off a single solar panel, to push air through the system. That tiny amount of electricity, the amount a small solar panel generates for free every clear day, runs the exchanger around the clock and moves more air through the pipes for more heat transfer. The fan draws perhaps 10 watts. A 40-watt solar panel and a small battery to run the fan at night is the whole electrical system. $300 once for a heat exchanger that runs on sunshine forever after. The honest scope of the Earth battery: it does not make a cold greenhouse warm by itself. What it does is prevent a cold greenhouse from getting as cold as it otherwise would. In practice, a properly built Earth battery in a 4-season greenhouse in Pennsylvania can keep the low temperature 4 to 8 degrees warmer than it would be on a bare ground floor. On a night when the outside air drops to 15 degrees and an unmodified greenhouse would follow it down to 25, the Earth battery floor may hold the space at 32 or 34. That is the difference between dead plants and living ones. That is the difference the Earth is offering you for the cost of some drainage pipe and a few days of digging. The fourth method is the one that costs nothing to run once it is built, and that the old greenhouse men and the old farmhouse builders knew better than anyone alive today. This is passive solar design, and it is the method that ties everything else together. A greenhouse, or a small building oriented correctly, glazed on the right face, and backed by the right kind of thermal mass, can collect and store enough solar heat during a clear winter day to stay warm through the night that follows without any other heat source at all. Not on every night, not through every cold snap, but on the clear days that follow the coldest nights, the sun does the work of the propane burner for free. The rules of passive solar are old and plain. Face the long glazed wall directly south. In the northern half of the world, the winter sun travels low across the southern sky all day. A south-facing wall of glass or greenhouse plastic catches that low sun from the time it clears the tree line in the morning until it drops in the afternoon. North-facing glass does almost nothing in winter except let the cold in. East and west walls catch the weak morning and evening sun, but miss the strong midday heat. South is where the winter sun is, and that is where your glass belongs. Add thermal mass inside the south wall. Water is the best thermal mass there is for the money. Water holds 5 times more heat per pound than concrete and 28 times more than air. 5-gallon black buckets of water set along the south wall of a greenhouse, or 55-gallon black drums, absorb the sun's heat all day and radiate it back into the space all night. The black color matters. It is not decoration. Black absorbs nearly all of the sun's radiation. Clear or white containers reflect much of it away. Paint the drums flat black, fill them with water, and stand them along the south wall. On a clear day, they warm steadily. On a cold night, they give that warmth back slowly into the air around them. A single 55-gallon drum of black painted water holds enough heat to raise the temperature of a small greenhouse by 8 to 12 degrees through a winter night. The north wall, east wall, and west wall of a passive solar greenhouse should be insulated, not glazed. Every square foot of glass on a wall that does not face the south sun is a square foot that lets heat out at night without letting enough heat in during the day to replace it. Rigid foam insulation on the north wall, covered with white painted plywood on the inside, is worth more to your greenhouse than the same money spent on heating fuel. The white inside surface reflects the light that comes through the south glass back onto the plants, doubling the light in the space. The insulation on the outside stops the cold from coming through the wall. That wall works for you around the clock. Now I want to take a moment because this is the part that matters. Look at what we have just walked through. A hotbed charged with horse manure that holds soil temperature between 70 and 85 degrees for weeks at a stretch for free. A deep litter living floor that generates hundreds of BTUs an hour from composting material that either costs nothing or that your animals are producing every day regardless. An earth battery that connects the floor of your building to the 50-degree warmth the earth has been storing since summer, running on convection or on the power of a single small solar panel. And a south-facing glass wall backed by black water drums that catches the winter sun every clear day and radiates it back through the night. Put 2 or 3 of these methods together in a single building and what you have is a structure that can grow food in the dead of a Pennsylvania winter with no propane, no electric heater, no bill that comes every month. The propane man drives down the road in February. The greenhouse owner with the frozen pipes writes another check. There is very good money in selling fuel every winter to people who do not know there is another way. There is no money in telling a man to pile horse manure under his garden bed and turn it once a month. There is no money in buried drainage pipe and black water drums and a south-facing wall of plastic. No company runs a commercial for any of it. No salesman knocks on your door to explain that the earth under your feet has been sitting at 50 degrees all winter and would like to warm your floor. So a whole nation of greenhouse growers and small homesteaders pays the propane bill every February and tells themselves that is just the cost of growing in winter. It is not. It never has been. The monastery gardeners of medieval Europe grew vegetables through the winter in hotbeds charged with horse manure. The Chinese farmers of Liaoning province figured out passive solar greenhouse design 400 years ago, and their descendants still use it to grow food in winters colder than Pennsylvania's. My grandfather kept a root cellar and a cold frame and understood that the earth itself was warm if you knew how to ask it. The knowledge has been here the whole time. The pipe and the water drum and the horse manure have been here the whole time. Most folks have just never been told to put them together. So, here's what I want you to do this week. Look at what you have. If you have a greenhouse or a building you are trying to heat, walk around it one time and ask these 4 questions in order. Does it face south? If it does not, that is the first thing to understand about why it is cold. Does it have thermal mass on the inside? Water, stone, brick, anything heavy that could absorb heat during the day and give it back at night? If it does not, 5-gallon black buckets of water cost almost nothing, and you can add them this week. Is there a deep bed of composting organic material inside or beneath it? If there is not, a load of horse manure from a nearby stable and a few bales of straw can have a living floor active and warm within a week. And is the floor connected to the earth below it in any useful way, or is it sitting on concrete that seals the warmth out? You do not have to build the full earth battery this winter, but know where that warmth is waiting. Start with one method. The black water drums are the cheapest and fastest. Paint 5-gallon buckets flat black. Fill them with water. Set them inside your south window and watch what the temperature in your space does on the next clear day. That one small change will teach you more about how these systems work than any video can. Tell me in the comments below, what are you trying to heat? A greenhouse, a small building, a root cellar, a barn corner for your animals? And what is your situation right now? Propane, electric, or nothing at all, and you are just trying to figure out where to start? Tell me what your coldest winter month costs you for heat, and tell me what you are growing or trying to grow. Because the folks who have been doing this for years should hear from the folks who are just beginning. And the ones just beginning should know they are not starting from nothing. They are starting from 400 years of people who already worked this out. I read every single one, and everything from today, The ratios, the pipe sizing, the drum calculations, the layer depths for the living floor is written down proper in the book. Link in the comment section below for studying slow before the next winter starts. Next time, since we have been speaking of keeping a building warm with what the earth and the sun give freely, I am going to show you the old way my people build a simple cold frame and a root cellar that together can keep vegetables alive and fresh from October all the way through to April with no electricity and no refrigeration. The cold storage, the right crops, the right containers, the simple tricks that mean a family eats from the garden all winter long. It is the natural next step after today. Until then, face your glass south, fill your buckets black, and remember that the earth under your feet has been holding warmth since September.